welcome to my channel. My name is Ria, and in this week's video, as you saw from the title, we are going to talk about the importance of making a sample or a gauge before you start knitting or crocheting something. Before I start, I want to apologize about the lights, because with the time change and the fact that I'm not home during the day, it's very difficult for me to film during natural light, and I hope it's not very disturbing. Bear with me. And please, if you like this video, press the like button, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so that you can be informed every time I upload a video. I wanted to talk about the importance of making a sample or a gauge before knitting and crocheting, because I'm a self-taught knitter and crocheter, and nobody explained to me how important it is to make a sample before I start knitting or crocheting. Either it was something I made without a pattern by myself, or when I followed the pattern. And this is very important because you don't knit or crochet like someone else. It's something handmade, and it's different if you make it twice. It's not going to be same if you do the same thing twice, and you don't use the same yarn as the pattern or the designer has used. And this is why it's so important to have a gauge when you want to knit or crochet, especially with garments, because if you try to make a blanket, it's not important if you make it 10 centimeters or 4 inches longer or wider. But if you make a hat or a cardigan, it's important if you make it 10 centimeters bigger than that you want. It won't fit. So I would like someone would have told me that it's very important to make a sample. And it's not only in patterns. If you notice on the yarn, you will find the information of how many stitches or chains you have to make and how many rows, so that you can have a sample. Usually it's 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters or 4 inches by 4 inches. So before you start making your sample, you have to see what the designer, the pattern or the yarn tells you to do to have this amount of stitches. But when you begin to make the sample, the first thing you have to know is that it's easier if you are going to knit or crochet like you are going to do on the garment you want to make. And what do I mean by that? If you want to make a hat and you crochet or knit in circle, it's better you do the same thing with your sample. When you want to knit in or crochet in rows, it's better to do the same thing in rows. If you want me to make a separate video about how to make a sample, a gauge when knitting, and when another one when you crochet, please ask me so that I can prepare it. After that, you are going to have to follow the stitches and the lines and the rows that the designer gives you, but it's better to make more stitches and more rows, and then I will explain why later. So when a designer tells you that you have to make 10 stitches and 10 rows so that you can have a 4 by 4 inches sample, it's better to make 20 stitches and 20 rows to the sample. Make it bigger, and I will explain later why. After you do finish with knitting or crocheting, you have to treat the sample that you made like you would treat the garment. When you are going to knit a sweater, you are going to wash the sweater. I never hand wash my knits. I always put them in the washing machine. I do the same with my samples, And this is very important because when you wash a yarn, either it will expand or it will shrink. And it's better to know before you start knitting, because if you make a garment that you want to wear and you have made something that costs a lot, and you put time to make it, and then you put it in the washing machine or you hand wash it and it shrinks, it won't fit. It's not something you wanted to do, and you have wasted time and money to make something that you are not going to wear. So by washing the sample, you know how the yarn will react, and you are prepared whether the thing you are making is going to shrink or is going to expand. And after you have washed the sample and it's dried, of course, you are going to measure. This is now the time to measure after you have knitted and washed the sample. That means that you have to put the sample in a flat surface, and either you have the special rule that helps you measure the gauge, or you can use a rule. I wouldn't use a measuring tape because it's not very steady, but with the rule you can find the stitches and see how many rows and how many stitches you have, so that you can make that sample 4 by 4 inches or 10 by 10 centimeters. And if your stitches and your rows are the same with the designers, it's okay. You follow the pattern as the designer tells you. But if your rows and your stitches are not the same, you have to adjust the size of your needles or the crochet hook. And what I mean by that is, if my designer tells me that I have to make 10 stitches and 10 rows so that I can have a 4 by 4 inches gauge. And I have in the same rows and the same stitches 12 by 12 centimeters or 5 inches by 5 inches. It means that I have to adjust my crochet hook with a bigger or a smaller size, depending what I want to do, whether I want to decrease or increase my gauge. And I have to knit it again. If it's not the same, I have to knit or crochet again the gauge and do the same thing again until I have the right gauge that the designer suggests for the pattern. And I know it's very annoying and it's very boring when you are excited to make something new and you want to start the design, because if it was their way, you would like to finish it in a day. I know the feeling, but I promise you it will help you a lot, because first of all you understand how the yarn reacts, and next time you already know that if you have a yarn that you have used again, whether it expands or it shrinks. And I know that it will help you a lot, so that you can understand the pattern better. I know it's not a magic recipe that if you make a sample you are not going to unravel and it's going to be perfect. Nobody's going to tell you that. You are just prepared for some things, and you don't get surprises like making a smaller garment than the one you want. But the most important thing, after you made the sample, you have the measurements right, you have the gauge right, it's to every time you have to try the thing you are making. You have to try it. You have to try if the hat is the right size and the right height. You have to try to see if the garment you are making, whether it's a cardigan or a sweater or a blouse, that it fits you. So you don't just start knitting and then when you have the final result then try it on. You have to try as you are making it. It's very important because it helps you to know if you're doing something wrong or something right before you finish something and you realize it's not what you wanted. It would be interesting to tell me if you are in the team make gauge, make samples, or the team go for it, go for the knit and the crochet pattern without making any gauge or anything like that. I would like you to tell me in the comments below. So this was this week's video. I hope you liked it. Press the like button so that you can let me know if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you can be informed every time I upload the video. Also, if you like, you can follow me on Instagram. Thank you very much for watching. See you next week. Bye.